Deleted Station, May 10, 1978. Now, another personal station. What of your letters and visitors lately? For one thing, the number of accidents, well-meaning letters, and the birthday cards were meant to show Rupert that he was regarded with affection and honor and not held up in scorn. They were also meant to show appreciation for your work jointly when it seemed you needed it, and therefore to revive both of your spirits. The same applies to your guests, and particularly to the two young boys from the Sunday school. Helpfully showing Rupert that all conventional churchgoers were not closed-minded, but were also seeking out new knowledge. The young man, with his gift, represented his generation in a way, and so in bringing his gift, he brought it symbolically for others. The longer visit with the cheesecake woman was meant to give you a closer look at the kind of person who gives lectures about us and so forth. So she was symbolic of others. The young girl was helped by her visit here, and symbolizes many others who are helped by the books alone. These were interruptions, and because of your attitudes, you thought of them as troublesome interruptions. Surely you would have sailed through your work otherwise, or performed chores that you wanted to accomplish, and so because you still do not really understand the effectiveness of Framework 2. Those visits added to your sense of concern and hustles with time. Framework 2 knows of all of your purposes, as I have mentioned. The visitors took Rupert's mind off of his condition, provided new stimulus, provided reassurance, and allowed his body to continue its improvements. Neither of you really, however, took full advantage of the reassurances. Those visits were intended to give each of you. You have a right to refuse guests, of course, and yet if you learn to work with Framework 2 with greater faith, you will find that other issues are usually involved than those immediately apparent. I may return to the subject of time later. It is obvious that Rupert's body is responding, and it is responding eagerly to the approaches you are now using, because it is dealing with the entire picture. The area at the right side of the back of the head, in Rupert's case, physically speaking, is a trigger point for motion. The blockage there, in those terms, has been largely responsible for the difficulties in locomotion, and for the eye difficulties as well. That area is finally in the process of releasing itself. The ligaments in the legs are responding beautifully, and as I said earlier, there is a give and take between the trunk and the neck areas. The neck area mentioned is also largely responsible for the arm angles, and all of that is now beginning vital release. This is an overall body process, then, and you are both handling it now very well. It is quite natural that Rupert becomes irritable at times. He should not pretend otherwise, for such irritability is short-lived, if expressed, and usually directly related to a particular difficulty in manipulation or whatever. Try to respond more clearly, each of you, to the moment, for you have a tendency otherwise. It should be obvious that comparatively speaking, Rupert feels quite well sometimes. He will be chatting or yelling at his painting or whatever. He is quite open often, say, to making love, as you know now. But earlier you colored your reaction to him often through the pessimistic cast that both of you had allowed to slip over your perceptions. He felt quite maligned earlier tonight. when you did not realize that he was not grunting with exertion as he walked to the bathroom several times today. You did not realize that. It was of course apparent to him, but this is an example of the way in which unthinking habits of reaction can inhibit your perception. The same sort of thing used to apply in a different way, but does no longer when Rupert would see you frown, for example, and would then ignore an obvious cheerful mood on your part, still interpreting your behavior in the light of the frown. I want to get into some other pertinent material, and will let you take a brief break before I begin. Before I discuss our main material, I have a few comments regarding strangers. You might make a small sign. Beloved stranger, we are walking. Please do not disturb us. You could add to that, please write a note, and buy yourself one of those contraptions for your door. Or you might decide yourselves upon some hour of the day or evening when such a guest would be least bothersome. You could decide never to see guests during the day, for example, and inform such people to come back at such and such a time. You could decide to see such people at lunchtime and no other time, and put that in your note. Come back at noon. You could therefore make several different kinds of decisions that would give you a free mind for large portions of the time. You would not be rejecting guests at the door, per se, but telling them to return at such and such an hour, or to leave a note. You could compose several such signs, so that one might read, "We are not seeing any strangers today at all, but there are many variations that you could settle for." Now Rupert himself hit upon the heroic impulses, and what he meant was this, that ideally speaking, the individual's impulses were in the directional signals that, followed, would automatically lead to the greatest fulfillment and development. He thought of that term before our framework 1 and 2 material, and his idea was that the impulses came from a part of the self that automatically knew the entire picture of the self's environment and potentials. He was quite correct, for those impulses arise from the larger self's immersion in framework 2, and those impulses led Rupert to his intuitive inspirations, experiences of psychic events, and to the books. When he becomes overly concerned about writing as work, or with psychic development as something he should do, then he tangles those impulses and becomes worried that he will not be suitably inspired again. To some extent, he feels abandoned at such times. Oversoul 7-2 began from inspiration, and whenever he turns back to the manuscript, he is inspired again. He enjoys the book, yet it has become entangled with his ideas of work and publishing schedules. He wants to be inspired. On the other hand, he thinks, what if I am inspired with new material when I still have 7 to finish? And when he decides I should be helping Rob with unknown. The reasons behind such behavior are given in the sections on work. He has been inspired, but to paint, because his impulses are quite correct. The painting of flowers leads him to contemplate beauty for beauty's sake, frees his mind, and also allows for certain kinds of muscular motions that are not beneficial. The idea is for him to play with 7, to let his mind freely play with ideas, and to follow his impulses. He paints as he writes, furiously involved in bursts. The psychic experiences, intuitional developments, and dream activity. These refresh him and lead precisely to the kind of inspiration he wants. So the library idea that you had is an excellent one, but it should be done playfully. I gave the 3-hour recommendation because at the time he was worried that he could not correlate the new physical impulses with his other activities. He has done very well there, however. Give us a moment. You are both apt to have rather absolute ideas at times. These sessions now are helpful. There is no reason, however, why in the future you cannot freely take a month off from sessions in order to quicken your work on unknown. That would not mean, for example, that Ruber was not using his abilities as far as impulses are concerned. Most likely, Ruber could have 3 or 4 accident sessions a week at certain periods in your lives, and there would be periods of vacation also. Often, however, you both have a tendency there to think in black and white terms. You are each making some excellent and vital readjustments, and our last session in particular should help clear your focuses. In Framework 2, unknown is completely finished, of course, and whenever you have any difficulty with a note or an appendix, take a moment and tell yourself that the final, completely quite excellent version of that note will come to you. This can be of excellent practical help. Your joint determination is already building up bonuses in many areas, and by all means, remember to keep up the personal contact you have begun to gather again. The suggestion, help, and inspiration are appearing at all levels of my experience, can now again be used by Ruber to good advantage. It will be of great benefit for you to make some kind of decision involving your guest, as I mentioned. If you decide you simply will not see anyone during the day, then have a note read accordingly, but be very clear in your own minds and act accordingly. It is advantageous from many standpoints to alter your hours, and some alterations do have the advantage of automatically providing solitude. You both seem to like regular hours and hobbies, however, so any such alterations, to be effective in a large manner, will have to be worked out so that you had a definite framework to rely upon. I merely want to mention various possibilities that can offer advantages. Ruber's point of power is progressing well. Your own attitude could hardly be better, as far as Ruber is concerned, since we are not looking for saintly behavior. Some definite decisions about guests, however, will relieve your minds and allow you to work more freely. Remind yourself again of unknowns, completed form, and if you do so, its pattern will transpose itself upon your thoughts as you work, so that you will be turning into its model in that respect. Everything that I have said should further help Ruber so that he feels more at ease. Remember the use of the playful creative abilities, because again, they can lead you to further ideas that will trigger anticipated positive results in Ruber's condition, as per your chair idea, the table in the kitchen, and so forth. Use this session to compose some new pendulum questions also. Now I bid you a fond good evening, and I expect hot towels underneath. The last session should be read again, for it can reawaken both of your psychic abilities to a greater degree. End of session. Ross said, thank you very much. Say said, you can always write a note that says, said, go away. Ross said, yes, good night.